Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Tanner, Ranking Member Brady, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is John Block, and it is a privilege to testify before you here today. After graduating from the United States Military Academy at West Point, serving in the United States Army, I returned to our family farm in Knox County, Illinois, where I still produce hogs, corn, and soybeans, and we do have our corn planted this year. Last year, it was really late. Between 1981 and 85, I had the high honor of serving as President Reagan's Secretary of Agriculture. Since leaving government, I've enjoyed opportunities in the private and public sectors relating to agriculture, exports, nutrition, and food policy. I currently serve as a senior policy advisor at Olsson, Weeda, but I am speaking to you today as a private citizen. I was in Cuba 10 years ago. I was there again last year, and I am convinced it's time to open Cuba to the United States for trade and travel. Ending our trade and travel embargoes against Cuba will be good for both the American people and the Cuban people. It'll be good for American agriculture, and most importantly, it will advance human rights and human liberty. I take a look back and I remember vividly the first time President Reagan's cabinet met. That was at the Blair House. He had not been sworn in at that point. We were each asked to describe the priority issue for our department. I urged the President to take immediate action on his campaign promise to end the grain embargo against the Soviet Union. Secretary of State Alexander Haig, Defense Secretary Cap Weinberger, they vehemently disagreed. They told the President the grain embargo should only be lifted in exchange for concessions from the Soviets. But President Reagan, who had no love whatsoever what he called the godless communism, would not go back on his word to the American people or the American farmer. And within the first 100 days of his presidency, he unilaterally ended the grain embargo because he believed that selling grain to the Soviet Union was the right thing to do. It would benefit the American farmer and the Russian families. It would communicate to the Russian people that the United States of America was their friend, that the United States was committed to their nourishment and ultimately their liberty. Selling grain to the Soviet Union, like President Reagan's speech at the Berlin Wall, advanced the cause of freedom and contributed to the fall of the evil empire. President Obama should be opening trade and tourism with Cuba, just the way the President Reagan opened trade and tourism with the Soviet Union. Congress should pass the Peterson-Moran bill to help him do that. For 50 years, we have tried to use sanctions to force the Cuban people to get rid of communism, and our policy has totally failed. Over those 50 years, we fought a war in Vietnam. Now we have full diplomatic relations with Vietnam. We weren't friends with China at all. I was in China in the 70s, and we didn't even have an ambassador over there. Now we have full relations with China. And the list goes on, but somehow we cannot bring it to ourselves to open up trade and tourism and relationship with Cuba, 90 miles from our border. It doesn't make any sense. Congress needs to act immediately to restore the free flow of agricultural exports to Cuba. Under the Trade Sanctions Reform and Export Enhancement Act of 2000, Cuba became a reliable customer for us, purchasing on average about $320 million in U.S. ag products each year. Many of those exports were specialized crops shipped in by smaller companies. In 2005, the Treasury Department contradicted the intent of Congress and required cash in advance of delivery instead of cash in advance of shipment. This introduced all kinds of havoc, I think most of you know. And since this change was instituted, all U.S. export trade with Cuba has had to be financed through foreign letters of credit routed through third country banks. And these restrictions have favored multinational companies that have the wherewithal to do a lot of this. And it excludes the small producers and processors and small businesses in the United States. These restrictions instituted by our own Treasury Department are actually trade sanctions directed against American farmers and ranchers. They have delivered the Cuban market into the arms of Brazilian, Canadian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and European competitors of ours. Congress provided temporary relief for these anti-agriculture sanctions in 2010. However, on October 1, that relief expires. Excuse me. And the American farmer will again be held hostage until this problem is solved permanently. And on the issue of travel, American people, just regular citizens, can travel anywhere in the world. We can go to Iraq. We can go to Afghanistan. We can go to Iran. And when years passed, I was in China in the 70s. But for some reason, we can't travel to Cuba. It is just insane. A strong step towards changing these failed policies is represented by the Peterson-Moran legislation, H.R. 4645. Peterson-Moran legislation would narrow the competitive advantage enjoyed by our foreign competitors. The Peterson-Moran bill could increase farm exports by nearly $500 million and create more than 6,000 jobs in agriculture and related sectors. And by ending the travel ban, the bill would create thousands more jobs and more than $1 billion worth of additional economic activity. By building a relationship directly with the Cuban people, we will begin transforming Cuba into a friendly democracy. Just as President Reagan's actions with regard to the Russian grain embargo affirmed our faith and self-confidence in freedom and the strength of our system, we should act now with that conviction and that kind of confidence. These reforms are long overdue, and I urge this Congress to make them happen. That concludes my testimony. Final point, I have in my hand the testimony of Roger Johnson, Farmers Union president, and I wholeheartedly agree with that, and it has been submitted to the committee. And thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions at your pleasure.